Hi everyone, welcome. So we're going to do an extra example where together, or at least under my guidance, we'll solve a question where together we're going to calculate the number of plumbing fixtures for a specific example. So let me put that example on the screen. There we go. So what we have here, just above me, is a flour mill. I'm going to put the reference for it right here. So we know that it's a flour mill. You can see also over here that I've put an indication of what it is, a flour mill with a length of 87.9 meters and a width of 28.1 meters. And what we're trying to find out, as indicated right here, is the minimum number of water closets, lavatory, and urinals for female and male washrooms as necessary to comply with the latest edition of the Ontario Building Code. As I'm recording this, that's the 2024 edition of the Ontario Building Code. Okay, so let's do it. So step number 1 is going to be to find the major occupancy of this space, and a reminder that that's according to topic 2, which is previously reviewed as part of this course. So the first thing we have to do is recognizing that this is a flour mill. We're going to use what we learned in topic 2 to determine what the major occupancy for this is. So a gentle reminder that what that means is that we're going to start with Appendix A, and specifically under sentence A-3.1.2.11. And what we find from there is that flour mill falls under the category of F1. And then if we go check out under table in division B, 3.1.2.1, what we find from that table is that is a industrial occupancy with high hazard like this. Okay, but what we get from here is this is an F1 major occupancy, which is the important thing that we want to get out of this. Okay, all right, so that's step 1, find the major occupancy. What is step 2? Step 2 is using topic 4 to determine the occupant load of this space. Now, the occupant load, if you remember, has something to do with a table. I'm going to write the table here. B, so this is in division B, table 3.1.17.1. Now we can use this table as long as the exceptions for plumbing fixtures do not apply in this case. And one of the exceptions specifically related to F1 major occupancies, so industrial occupancies, which is what we have here, relates to or is found under division B, 3.7.4.21. So, okay, that exception for industrial major occupancies, read it, it does not apply in this case, or we're going to assume it doesn't apply because we don't know the exact number of staff that are using that space. So instead, we're going to employ this table. And a reminder of what this table looks like right here. Okay. So what this table is, if you remember, is, I'm going to show this maybe in blue, like this. So this table here, table 3.1.17.1, is a table that contains occupancies in this half, all major occupancies, and then occupant load factors in this half, okay? So we go and find where industrial major occupancies are, which are right here. And then we find the closest one among the available ones that are to a flour mill, which is manufacturing or process room. And then we find the corresponding occupant load factor, which is 4.6. Okay, so that's 4.60 meters squared per person. Okay? Okay, the occupant load factor is 4.60 meters squared per person. Okay, the other thing that we need at this point is the area of this space, right? So we're going to need the area and the occupant load factor to find the number of people, the occupant load. The area in our case is length times width. And if you remember, based on the question that I just made up right now, the length for this is 87.9 meters. And the width for this is 28.1 meter. And when I do it best 2 out of 3, I get 2,469.99 meters squared. Okay? And now I'm going to use these two quantities to figure out the occupant load. That is the number of people. So the occupant load is equal to the area divided by the occupant load factor. So the area is 2,469.99 meters squared. The occupant load factor we found from the table is 4.60 meters squared per person. So when I divide these two numbers, best 2 out of 3, I get this number. And I'm going to be silly about writing it, because this is what I would see if I simply put it in a calculator. Okay? And what? 3, 4, 7, 8, 2, 6, 1 people. Okay, it keeps going, as you can see. Okay. Now, we don't really care about all of these decimal numbers, decimal places. All we care about is that there is a decimal place after this digit. So that means that we have to pick the closest whole number that is more than 536, right? Because people are whole numbers. So what we pick is 537. So that's the occupant load according to this step right here, 537 people. Let's move on then to the next step, which is step number 3. So in step number 3, we have to remind ourselves of what the occupant load is. The occupant load that we found was 537 people. So these are all the people that are expected to be using that space, okay? That length times width space in that flour mill. But we have to divide this into two categories, female and male, because we're assuming that 50% of this number are going to be using the female bathroom, and 50% of this number are going to be using the male bathroom. So if I do 537 divided by 2, I get 268.5 people, and 268.5 people. Is that good? No. Don't forget, people are whole numbers. So we have to always round up to the nearest whole number, right? Because what we're getting here is that we're getting more than 268. So what does that mean? It means that in the female bathroom, there are going to be 269 people. And in the male bathroom, there are going to be 269 people. Like that. Okay? Amazing. Let's then move on to step 4. Step 4 is using the information that we now have. Okay, so that's that for female bathrooms, we're going to be having 269 people. And that for male bathrooms, we're going to have 269 people. We're going to find the right table or article in the Ontario Building Code that allows us to convert this number of people for female and males to equivalent number of water closets or toilets for short. Okay? So let's do that. When I have a look under the proper section and subsection, so this is under Division B 3.7.4, I find that the appropriate location for our major occupancy, remember, that was F1, industrial occupancy, right? When I find the proper article for this, I find that the proper article is 3.7.4.9. This is the proper one for industrial occupancies, okay? Because this is an F1 major occupancy. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, that's the article right there. Okay, and the nice thing about this article right here, 3.7.4.9, it even tells you in it that it's for industrial occupancies. So what you do, you start from the very beginning and you read the first article. And what it says is that as long as sentence 2 does not apply, then you can use this table. So we have to read sentence 2 first. I read it, it does not apply in our case. Okay, so that means that we can use this table. And the way that this table is set up, look at that. Even in the table, it tells you that it's for industrial occupancies right here. Okay. What this table does is in this column, it has the number of persons. Okay. So that's the number that we calculated right up there, 269. And then in this column, it has the corresponding number of water closets and lavatories. Interesting. Well, for now, we're just going to look at the water closets, okay? All right. So we have 269. So where we fall is under here, over 100. And what it says for over 100, that the corresponding number of water closets is, I'm going to read it, 6 plus 1 for each additional increment of 30 persons for each sex in excess of 100. That's what it says. I have to admit to you that I'm having some difficulties with that, right? It's not super clear what it actually means, and it's a commonplace for people that are new to the building code and are starting to learn it to make mistakes in coming up with the proper number of water closets. So what I'm going to do is show you how to interpret the portion that when you get this over 100. Okay, so let me make this disappear. We know that we're over 100. Okay, so I'm just going to make a note that we are over 100. And what does that mean? So what that means in our case is that it's going to be a 6 plus 1. So we're going to have 6 water closets for sure. And then we have to add 1 for each increment of 30 above 100. Okay, and the way you do it is this. In our case, we're going to look at the total number of people that we had, which was 269. We're going to do it for female first, and we'll do it for male next. 269 people is what we calculated. So then you subtract 130 from that number. Okay, because that's this number, 100, plus the increment that's mentioned there. In our case, the increment for that table specifically is 30 people. Okay, so together, those two numbers are this one here. So you do 269 minus 130. That number is 139. Then you take that number, 139, and you divide it by the increment that you're given, which is this number here, 30. Because that tells you how many increments of 30 are in excess of 130. Because you only start counting those increments once you get to 130. So this number here comes out to be 4.6 increments. Like that. Okay? So, what does that mean? 4.6 increments is 5 increments. Okay? And that's because water closets, toilets, they're whole numbers. You don't deal with 0.6 worth of toilets, right? You deal with a whole toilet. So 4.6 means more than 4, which is 5. You round up. Make sense? So what that says then is you're going to use the 6 plus 5 right here. So that's the number of water closets you have for females. Okay? Water closets for female is 6 plus 5, which is 11 water closets. Okay? How about for males? it's the same thing. Because in the table, if you remember the table itself, it makes no distinction for the calculation for male or female bathroom. 6 plus 5 equals to 11 water closets. Now, one thing that I want to point out after all of this work here is, again, that if you're new at the building code, doing these calculations of over 100 sometimes can lead to a mistake. And that's because some of the other tables don't have over 100, but they may have a different number, like over 800 or over 425, okay? And their increment, instead of being 30, might be a different increment. So what I've done is, for some of these tables that have this kind of over 100 with increments of 30, is I've created a table for you in our Brightspace space for our building code course that you can use. Okay, and it looks something like this. And the way it's set up is that I basically took the same table that's in the building code right here, but what I did is I continued it over 100. Okay, so it goes all the way, I think I did it up to, I don't know, 1,000 or so right here. And then in this column, it has the corresponding number of water closets already calculated. You, my students, if you're in my course and you have access to this table, you're welcome to use this table instead of doing the calculations, or at the very least to check your calculations. Make sure you reference this table if that's the table you use, okay? So I just figured I'd let you know about that. All right, the next step right now is step number 5. We have the water closets, okay, for females, which is the same as the number of water closets for males, which was 11. Now, somehow we have to figure out the number of lavatories, which is the building code's name for sinks. How do we do that? Well, we first check to see if the clause or the portion of the building code or the table we have there tells us the number of lavatories, and if not, we go to a different location. So in our case, when I bring this up, this table here we were looking at, look at this. In here, it does have the number of lavatories right here. So it says basically that whatever number of water closets you find, it's the same number of lavatories, which is very convenient because in this specific case, that means that this number of water closets is also the number of lavatories. The number of lavatories for females, which is the same number of lavatories for males, is going to be 11. 11 lavs. Okay? Nice and easy. We figured that out. 11 water closets, 11 lavs for this specific question. Let's move on to step number 6. For step number 6, what we have to do is for male washrooms only, we have to figure out how many of those water closets, right? We had 11. How many of these can be turned into urinals? And the location in the building code in part 3 that tells us about the number of urinals is under division B, 3.7.4. What was it? I don't remember. Maybe I can bring it up. There it is, right there. 3.4.24 A and B. Okay? So you can go and check it out. I'm going to make it super visible. I'm going to write it better here. 4.2, 4A, and 4B. Okay? And what these two clauses say is that depending on the major occupancy of the space, you either use 4A or you use 4B. And from 4A, it says that up to 1/5 of the required number of water closets in hospitals and long-term care homes. That's not it. We don't have that kind of major occupancy here. 4B says up to 2/3 of the required number of water closets in any other occupancy. So that's for us. The one we're looking for is 4B, right? Because our F1 occupancy is not a hospital or similar, right? It's not a hospital or a long-term care home. Then what we do is we use the 2/3. So what this says is that up to 2/3 of the water closets we calculated can be turned into urinals. So let's do that calculation together. we have that the number of water closets is 11, and then we figure out how much 2/3 of that is. That number, when I do it best 2 out of 3, is 7.3, I think I get. Let me know if I get the same number, if you get the same number as me. So 7.3 urinals. So 7.3 water closets can be turned into urinals. Obviously, you can't have 0.3 of a urinal. So how many urinals is this going to be? It's going to be 7 urinals because you round down. Why do we round down? We've been rounding up so far. Why do we round down? It's because of what the building code says here. It says that, you see this here where it says up to 2/3 right there? That means that the most that this number can be, or this number can be, is 2/3. 2/3, we found it to be 7.3. So if we round up to 8 urinals, that's more than 2/3 of 11. So this is no good. We have to come up with the biggest whole number that is not more than 2/3. In this case, it's 7. Okay? So for urinals, you have to make sure that you round down, everyone. Okay? All right. So this is the number of urinals that we're going to be using here. Now, what that means is that if we have 7 urinals, we no longer have 11 water closets for the male bathroom, and instead we have this. We're going to have 11 water closets, okay, 11 water closets that become 7 urinals and 4 water closets. Because together, these still have to add up to 11. Because the building code says you can replace some of these water closets with urinals. Okay? So 4 water closets, 7 urinals in the male bathroom. So it turns out we actually finished this question. We can now come up with the final answer. What is the final answer for this question? Well, we basically make a note of, put a therefore statement. And what I like to do is I like to separate between the female washroom and the male here. Okay, just like that. So for the female, we have water closets and lavatories like this. For the male, we're going to have water closets, lavatories, and urinals. Okay, these are the answers we're going to get. So for females, we're going to get that we're going to have 11 water closets and 11 lavatories. For male, we're going to get 4 water closets, 11 lavatories, and 7 urinals. Okay, and I like to also then make my final answers super obvious, so anybody looking at them cannot miss them. I like fluffy clouds because they're cute and fluffy, and then I also like to point at it with a big arrowhead, so even I can't miss it. Heck, we could even put a big smiley face next to it. Okay, that's it. So that's how we would solve this question. I hope this helps a little bit with that portion of the tables that says the over 100. Okay, take care and have a lovely day.